Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Buenas tardes, todas y todos. Son las últimas palabras en español, quizás, pero he preparado una presentación en español también. ¿Puedo hablar en inglés o mejor en español? Inglés es también mejor para mí, evidentemente. It's a real great pleasure to be here with you today, and it's an honor. It's 30 years of the Cámara Forestal Madera Industria, and Presidente, you have been fantastically bringing this together on a topic that is really quite high on the agenda globally today. How do we address all these global challenges that we have? We discuss one of the materials today as a possible contribution to it. So it's a panorama mundial, these perspectivas sobre los mercados y las políticas de productores forestales. My job for the next 30 minutes or so. One thing that I think we all are fairly clear is that forest products are fairly broad. Forests provide a lot of things to society and the planet. Wood and fiber is just one. But wood and fiber is also the only one in a way that has a market, that has a price, that has products, that has statistics because it's valuable and it's traded. A lot of the ecosystem services are not. So overall, forests certainly are undervalued in our market systems. There's a lot of development on markets for ecosystem services, carbono, biodiversidad, other such markets, but they are really at their infancies. But a lot of our GDP, our national production of the economies depend on those ecosystem services. Today, we look more or less at products, and this is the rest of my discussion on services. But just let's keep in mind, this is one of the things why Costa Rica is known in the world, because it has taken care of ecosystem services through the last decades. This is just one of the many studies that try to get an overview, so don't look at the details. It's just a signal of what the forests provide. My second point is that we actually produce a lot of material of wood. It's about 4 billion, 4 millones de meter cubic per year on the planet. It has grown since the 1990s, I think that is. But half of it, of the 4 billion, is actually burnt. It's wood fuel, it's linear, it's short-term use, it's very low value added. So there's a lot of potential in terms of using half of that for better purposes, rather than sending it to the incinerator right away. It's an important bioenergy source, and a lot of the industrialized countries, including my home country, they invest quite a lot in bioenergy from forests. And it's a good business for many who do that. So we have 4 million cubic meters of production. And these 4 million cubic meters are from a material that we know is possibly able to help us as a society on this planet to address a range of urgent global challenges. It's a carbon neutral material, and you see here construction. Oops, that was too fast. You see construction, but you also see a lot of other materials. This is textile. Half of the growth that we foresee in terms of demand for wood is for man-made cellulosic fibers, textile. A lot of the material research now goes into biochemicals, into medicines, into batteries even made from lignin from wood. So there is a lot that goes into research and it goes into production in terms of a carbon neutral product. The other element that is really different from a lot of the other materials that we use on this planet is that it's renewable if we manage it well. 75% of the materials that we use currently are not renewable. So we have a base of material use in our economies that basically is renewable for 25%, not renewable for 75%. If we manage forests well, our children and grandchildren can use the same resource and can live with it happily. If we go on like we do now, our children and grandchildren will have to be even more innovative to find ways of reducing non-material use. And the third one that is really standing out in some ways is it is a resource that is really distributed across the countries. You have seen the map of the colleague showing the remote sensing. Half or more than half actually of Costa Rica is green. That's the distribution of a resource where you can use those resources locally, provide income opportunities in rural areas on a renewable basis, from a green basis. So that's something that is difficult to find any other resource that would be able to do that. So we have been looking into how will the demand for this wood actually change over time, and made a projection to 2050. And given that we are still growing as human beings here on the planet, we have a base scenario where we see that until 2050 we might get an increase in demand for wood of around 25% to 37%. This demand is mostly driven by panels. You see a fairly big jump from this one to this one for plywood in this case, and from particle and fiberboard, tableros de madera, from this year to this year. So there's the biggest market driver for the near future. We think that might be panels, partly also because of what we have just seen. They are very easy to produce, also with lower grade materials, and you can build houses with it or other things. So we have a projected consumption that is growing by quite a bit because of growing population. And then we have a bioeconomy that we would have to put on top of that. That would increase the demand for wood products even more. We estimate that this will add another 8 to 23% of wood demand. So that's a bit of wood that we need for the future if we want to build a green economy on that one. The question is, where does this come from if we have a situation where the area of forest actually is shrinking on the planet? We said 4 billion cubic meter per year of wood consumption. We have 4 billion hectares on the planet of forests. And these forests tend to shrink. This is the deforestation figure from 1990 to 2015. We have reduced the loss of forests to around 10 million hectares per year. That's the right direction, but it's not zero. We have also reduced forest expansion over the last decades. Some of the major countries that have invested into restoration, into growing forests, like China, have reduced their efforts of planting trees. So you have a minus 5 million hectares per year while the demand is growing. How do we get this equation right? Is the question for all of us that want a green economy. So 5 million hectares will not be enough. What we want and what we would need in terms of material is around 33 million hectares more, just to capture what we want for bioeconomies. So there needs to be a lot of investment in forest, growing forest areas as we go forward. The good news is that should be possible. We have around 93% of all our forests are regenerated in natural ways. We have a fairly small basis of 125 million hectares. It's not a lot of area in total, out from 4 billion, 125 million hectares of planted forests. That's pure plantation, monoculture, just as the colleague from Chile said. That's a monoculture, one species, one age. And then other planted forests, they together are 7% of the forest area, 7%. But these 7%, they provide 50% of the raw material for the industry. So if we add to the 125 million hectares that we have, 33 million hectares, we could make this work. And we think we can make it work if we combine and interrelate 3 different pathways that all need together and add up in the end. One is to protect, the other one is to restore, and the third one is to use that material that we have sustainable. I'll make a point for each of those 3. The first one is to protect. We lose 10 million hectares per year. That needs to stop. It's the best way of reducing emissions from climate, from greenhouse gases. This is from the IPCC, a report from 2023, where you see different ways of reducing emissions and different costs per unit of reduction. The reduction of forest areas, deforestation or degradation, is the single most efficient way of reducing this after using solar panels or solar energy. So it's a very cost-effective way of getting our emissions reduced. It's contributing around 14% to our targets of staying within the limits that we need by 2030. It's more effective than building with wood, and it's more effective than restoration. Halting deforestation needs to be there first on the map. It's also there because of the biodiversity that is in forest. Up to 80% of the terrestrial biodiversity is in forests. The second is restoration, getting forests and getting trees back into landscapes that are possibly degraded or not productive. Here in the region you have this initiative, 20 por 20. It's around 52 million hectares the government have committed to restore of their lands. Costa Rica, I think, is 1 million. So we said we need around 33 million for a bioeconomy scenario. We need maybe, if that is not high productive plantation, maybe we need around 125, 130 million hectares, maybe 200, depends on how much. So in this region you have 52. In the African region, similar initiative, they have pledged 130 million hectares. In Asia, you find around 150 million hectares of pledges by governments to restore land in their countries. And all in all, on the planet, we think the governmental commitments are around 1 billion hectares of restoration. 1 billion hectares, that's much more than 100 million. But it costs a lot to do that, and this is uncertain. We just know that the land for restoration really would be there, and it would be beneficial for many things, for carbon, for biodiversity, for people. And the last one, and maybe the main one for this event here, is the sustainable use. It always comes to very similar ways of showing how you can link up renewable resources, how you can build cascading uses, how you can build circular economies. They all look the same from different companies, and all of them point to a few things. One is, you need high value to get out from those forests. That may be the first one that I heard quite often in these presentations today. If you can get more value than burning it right away, try to get more value. If construction is the best thing to do, you can do that. But there might be other better uses. And afterwards you can still burn it. Residues to heat your dry chambers, etc. There is a lot of things that can be done technologically. But the point is, we want to get the highest value added for the companies and for society. It needs a return on investment. It needs a lot of gains in efficiencies. We use a lot of materials not the way we could use it in a better way. So the efficiency of material use, and the colleague from Chile just talked a lot about standardization of industrial processes. A lot of this is about the efficiency of material use. The optimization of value added, labor productivity. There is a lot of capacity development that needs to go into using machines that are proper, having the know-how of doing that in a proper way. If we look at the realities as compared to the pathways forward, these are some more statistics. You have seen some of them. This is the current production in a couple of countries in the region between the year 2000 and the year 2022. These countries have 21 million hectares of forests. They have around 321 million hectares of planted forests, so more productive forests. So from around 21 million hectares, you get around 4 million cubic meters. That's maybe, let me calculate quickly, that's 7 cubic meters per, no, one cubic meter per 7 hectares per year. That's basically half a tree on 7 hectares. That's not a lot of wood that comes out from those forests. Need not come from every forest, but it's still a fairly low level of roundwood production. And you can see that the trend tends to go down in several countries, or is pretty flat for decades, actually. And this is sawnwood, basically from these 4 million hectares, 4 million cubic meters, you get 1 million cubic meter of sawnwood produced, 1 million cubic meter from 21 million hectares. That doesn't seem like very much to me. You can also see that there is very little investment, it seems, into those capacities. So there is a fairly big job ahead. There have been some statistics that have been shown about exports and imports. You can see the same, now it's Central America, excluding Mexico, but you can see that basically the exports here are, for the whole region, are very low. I come from a small country. It's a bit bigger than Costa Rica, but not much. The Austrians, they export 10 million cubic meters of sawnwood, only sawnwood, every year under sustainable management. That's 20 times as much as the whole region from here. So it's there is potential, I think. There's a lot of import in comparison to export, meaning you have quite a good domestic market to take care of. You don't even need to export. You can check how to substitute for imports and import what is useful. In terms of political priorities for the next years that we see emerging in terms of sustainable wood and in terms of forest-based bioeconomy, we see maybe at the political level 3 areas that really catch attention, and several of those have really been discussed in more detail, so I can possibly be a bit short. The one is the issue that was brought up by our colleague sitting here on the left earlier, this sort of the public and the consumers are possibly really very keen of keeping forests protected and forests intact, and I think they are right with it. It's just a question of how do we keep that at the same time while using them. So there is a lot of need to have consumers and citizens accept that forests are used and see the benefits and how it is used in a sustainable way. I think there is a nice story to tell, and this needs quite a bit of attention as we talk about using wood in a different way. In terms of the political intergovernmental developments, there have been a few that have been mentioned before by the President here, the Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership with a group that deals with sustainable wood in construction. There has been a statement by the heads of state at the G7, because I understand the ambassador of Japan was here, about nature positive economy and sustainable wood. G7 heads of state. We have the bioeconomy initiative by the G20 driven by Brazil, looking really into forest-based bioeconomy aspects. We have global initiatives of the collaborative partnership on forests. We have a European intergovernmental initiative of promoting wood and bringing wood forward. And this seems to be a topic that is getting attention and attraction by quite many governments, and many are looking towards COP30 and also beyond to a possible summit in 2026 on that very topic. So there is a momentum amongst governments to look into green solutions that make sure that the planet is healthy. It's a good time to discuss this politically. The second is the investments that need to happen and the innovations that need to happen to move the agenda forward. And these are really many. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize in many ways is that there is one large resource that is really important, and that's the mind and hearts of people that live in those areas where trees and forests grow. Around 4.3 million hectares are actually managed by smallholders, by local communities, by indigenous peoples. Many of those are used to planting trees or could be very interested in planting trees, not necessarily industrial scale monocultures, but planting trees. It's a huge area of land for the 120 million hectares that we would need. If they get the right incentives and they get the benefits, I guess they would be interested in listening to you. The other one is, of course, the large industry. This one is from New Forest. They talk about $1 trillion forest assets industry to emerge from these developments that we have just gone through. 1 trillion. That's I'm not so good at large numbers, but it seems like $1,000 million forest asset investment potential that they see in terms of industrial investment. And then, of course, and that has been mentioned quite often, the role of governments in investigation and desarrollo público, but also in helping the private sector take risks, pilot, demonstrate, change the enabling environment for the private sector, who is the main driver of innovations in the markets, to move the agenda forward. We bring out a state of the world's forests every 2 years. The last one talked about these 3 pathways that I just recapitulated with you. This one this year talks about the innovations in the forest sector that are needed to bring these pathways forward. The main message maybe from that publication that we just issued last year is that let's not only talk about technological innovations, and this was one of the things that I picked up quite often this afternoon. There's a lot of political innovation that needs to happen. The Ministry of Agriculture talk with the Ministry of Environment. The ones that want conservation talk with others that want a green development. There's a lot of institutional innovation that needs to happen across and along the value chains. And that has been pointed up by many of the speakers. It's very important to make this link between the forestry communities and the next step of the value chain of sawmillings, of construction, of the financing sectors. All of those need to find ways to work in platforms and exchange information in platforms and work together. There is, of course, financial innovation. Taking risks needs to be reasonable. Companies that take too much risks, they disappear. So there needs to be a mechanism to reduce that risk. We've heard just some examples from Chile, what is done there to give some incentives to invest. And of course, the many technological innovations that need to happen. You have seen many of these. I'm coming to the end. The last one that also ran through a little bit is the safeguards that need to be in place. The safeguards that need to be environmental. This is deforestation if you want, but they also, a lot of the safeguards need to think about how do we make sure that our forests are fit for a changing climate. If you are in some of these places, I guess in Chile, where there is monoculture from exotic species, you would not want to see this 5, 10, 20 years down the road because your plants are drying. Nor does any of the smallholders that want to plant a 3 or 4 for their family want to see this. So a lot of the industrial investments need to think hard, how can you make this happen to be adapted to climate change? We have increasing forest fires, we have increasing pests and diseases. A lot of issues if we don't take care of those. Same goes with the social aspects. There needs to be an approach that really goes to the communities and brings the smallholders on board. There are many forest producer organizations that are engaged, that are really important to make the landscapes greener and to get value out from these investments. And that goes beyond just planting trees, because if those trees are not cared of, you will never come to that stage. We've talked about technical norms and standards. Yes, indeed, these are important. A lot of the construction buildings have not been able, because of prohibitive fire and inflammation standards, or of prohibitive standards in terms of high-rise buildings. We have changed, again in my country, changed in many other countries, changed these laws and standards step by step, so that we now also have these types of high-rise buildings that you find in many places now, made from wood. I'd like to end with a small video that we have produced, and I hope it works. This is just a reminder that yes, we have a growing solution, but it needs a lot of care to make the solution grow in ways that we want. And one of the things that I think we all know is that there is a lot of risks ahead. And I think we also really need to work together to approach those risks as a society on the planet. So I'm really happy that you have this discussion here in this region, organized by the Camera. Thank you very much. Let's see whether the video works.
A growing population means more buildings to fit everyone. By 2030, we will have to house an additional 3 billion people. The problem is that a lot of the building materials we use just aren't good enough for the planet. This is where wood from sustainably managed forests comes in. Thanks to innovation, wood is a modern, strong, renewable alternative. With wood, we can build faster, tread lighter, and create homes that don't cost us the earth. Choose sustainable wood for people and the planet.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, don Ewald. Si alguien tiene alguna consulta para don Ewald, ojalá en inglés, puede levantar la mano y llevamos el micrófono a donde se encuentren. Todo muy claro. Bueno, muchas gracias. Tenemos una consulta.
Yes, first I'd like to congratulate you on the presentation. It was really interesting. I'm actually not in the timber business, but in the natural rubber sector. And one of the main things that we have found is problems getting financing, especially in these developing countries. So you talked about financing is one of the factors that needs to be taken care of. So what would be some suggestions or some channels that we may look at in order to find a solution for this?
Could I just go ahead? Please do ask in Spanish if that's fine. I will try my best or get some help to get them back to you. That is actually one of the frustrating things, really. We have all these pledges that are made. We have this $1 billion that we see in the newspapers. And if we do the checks of how much is actually reaching the ground on for small-scale producers, last time we checked, it was 1.7% of all those big things. So we have just recently put together a task force of financial intermediaries and development banks and also private sector players that work on channeling funds to small-scale producers, forest products, enterprises of smaller scale, to really bring these experiences together, because we see that there is this big gap between microfinance that is too small and these big, more commercial loans that are just too big for many to really make a difference. So from an intergovernmental development bank point of view, there is a lot of attention of bridging this gap that is needed to really make all these pledges work for the people that need that. I'm sorry that I can't give you a definite answer on this. It is one of the high high importance items that I see now in many of those development banks. One of the things that is often said is that we don't have, the banks say that, we don't have bankable products, we have a bad pipeline of good business plans to come to us. But when we supported producer organizations to develop good business plans, we realized that's not the only problem. They just don't get money with good business plans either. We have also worked with domestic financial institutions on the banking side, because when we talk to banks, they say, we do have all these credit lines, we just don't get the money out. So there is a lot of work to do in this making this happen, and it very often really, and that brings us back to one of the things that is also running through a little bit, is that the governments do have a role in just making sure that the people find ways to talk to each other and meet, because we see, especially in these green solutions, quite an interest from both sides to find solutions. But like the technical norms of a building are not easy to change overnight, nor are these financial regulations that allow some of these things to happen. And I would hope that if I could come back here in 5 or 10 years, we would have that crossed off our to-do list. It certainly is still there.
Hello. So my question is, for reforestation, you need space, right? But for housing, people need space too. So if population keeps growing, how can we counteract those needs for space for both very important situations? Thank you.
That is a really good question. A lot of the attention in wooden buildings is now high-rise buildings, but a lot of the architects also have realized building up is not the only way. But if I see what is feasible now with renewable materials, it's certainly more than one floor buildings, but it's a choice of the individual consumers, and it's a choice of the city councils and the governments to allow spread and areas being sort of put under concrete or whatever it is, asphalt. Things are as they are, I'm sorry to say. A lot of people move into cities, and that's why we focus a lot on finding ways for cities to build areas in wood, not in high-rise buildings that might be too expensive for many, but in lower-cost solutions that allow many people to live in an area. But sort of this fragmentation of the landscapes with more people remains a topic. It's not as much as a topic as you might think. In many countries in Africa, these are the countries where there is the most population growth. It's not a big topic there currently.
A lot of questions. Tenemos por acá más preguntas. Tal vez si me ayudan con el micrófono. Gracias. Y por acá también tenemos otras consultas.
Sí, ya habla. Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. I think that we have a good view all the world around, and we see also that we are a very tiny part of this world, but we have more resources that could be used. We use only a fraction, a tiny fraction of the growth of the forests. And that is a big sin, because we should use what the forests are producing sustainably. And we have, with all these problems of climate change, and that is an issue that I want to bring here, we have all these hurricanes and storms and floodings, etc. And the emergency organizations are not prepared to have a quick answer. The governments, I think, should have an investment in prefabricated wooden houses to have a quick answer to all these people that is suffering, that has no homes, etc., or the big fires. And every year and again, as I said before, it's the same problem, and we don't put the solution. We need to make a big progress on that. I don't know how, maybe you can answer a little bit.
Well, certainly, having a microphone, being here at the stage, it doesn't make a difference in terms of understanding the world better than a very senior person that has a lot seen in his life, I'm sure. We see this happen, actually. I'm not sure always the government needs to step in for these types of things. There are solutions that companies can provide and maybe get a deal with the government to do this or that, but it is something that is happening actually in some countries where such shelters are produced fairly fast and then also brought to site. We have seen one example from Chile, where this can work. So I'm really a great believer in the innovation potential and power of enterprises if that works in harmony with societal needs and the governments.
Hey, how are you? Hey, I have a question. The European Union usually imposes regulations on third world countries, say non-developed countries, in planting trees, doing stuff like this. What is the European Union doing physically to plant trees in Europe, changing unforested lands for forested lands? Because a tree takes many years to grow. So it ties up that land. And it's easier to point the finger and say, you guys do it over there. And what's the European Union doing in their physical area? Because we saw in Latin America and we saw Africa, but I did not see North American or Europe.
Good question. I'm not an expert in Europeans, but I am from Europe, so I can tell you that a lot of the foresters in my country are just as sort of not happy about the regulations that come from the European Union, because all the regulations that they have to impose outside, they also have to impose inside. So we deal with the EUDR just as any other country in the world. I am a smallholder in Austria, so yes, it comes to me just as well. The Europeans for quite many years, decades actually, have now used the common agricultural policy funding to also fund afforestation and restoration. So we have growing areas of forest, especially in those regions where the agricultural land is not very productive. It is a farmer to decide whether he wants to get some subsidies to plant trees. So you have some of the countries that have where farmers have used that more, and some of the countries where farmers have used that less. But it is agricultural policy funding that helps to restoration. We also have a lot of African countries that are flooded by requests of external investors that they fund the planting of trees, and African countries are very careful of signing these contracts of planting, although money would come in. So it is really a government to understand what they want and make the right decisions.
Okay. Are you aware of the existence of urban forests created for sustainable timber harvesting, i.e. referring to plantations within urban spaces, cities, or large populations that are used for both recreational and harvesting?
Yes, actually, FAO has a Green Cities initiative that the Forestry Division now has has taken over to lead. It's a very important topic in the wider context of greening the planet. Cities are just an important reality in many people's lives, and many people would want to see trees or green spaces around them. Just if you're in the center of a town in a heat wave, the temperature of a tree or a park will reduce that heat by around 10 to 12% sometimes. So there is a lot of efforts of greening spaces with trees, not necessarily for harvesting for timber, but for recreation and for regulating the climate. And even more now, there is, with all these flash rains, there is a lot of things that you can see where they want to break up the tarmacs and find ways where the sort of tree rows can really suck up more water so that there is less of a surface runoff. But at the same time, you have situations like recently in Spain where just went through the city with huge destructions. So yes, greening cities is a big topic. It's also one of the ways of bringing trees closer to people, urban consumers that often make decisions and vote for the one or the other way of dealing with trees.